we have Remarks and a Cultural Performance from Jacob Maxey. Jacob Maxey is a accountant, activist, Marxist Marxist anti-imperialist from Louisiana. All right, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Dust. First of all, a huge shout out to you. I think you're doing a great job, and I really enjoy Dust James' Anti-Imperialist America. I would really recommend people go check that out if they haven't already. And then, of course, also to all the incredible socialists and Marxists who helped put this together. A lot of work went into it, and I'm very honored to be included amongst both the panel of guests and on Caleb's channel, where I know the community pretty well. So for my presentation, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself because I feel like there's probably a lot of people who come from a similar background and are in a similar situation as me. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing, and I'm going to do my cultural performance. So to start out with a little bit of backstory, I'm 24, living in Louisiana. I'm like right on the cutoff between Gen Z and millennial. I'm like tail end of millennial, beginning of Gen Z. And for people in kind of my age range, I think one of the most important really political moments for most of us, or at least for a lot of us who call ourselves socialists and are around my age, was the Bernie Sanders campaign, right? It was, for a lot of us, it was the first time that we felt like a major political candidate was taking what we needed into account. And I wasn't an activist until like probably a month or two ago. And I'm not particularly active in any party just because in Lafayette, there's not a large socialist organization. And so the Bernie movement kind of represented people like me, people who weren't part of a massive party, but kind of believed in these ideas. And then we all kind of saw as Bernie was disallowed from the club, right? He just wasn't allowed to make his case. And obviously they didn't treat him very fairly. And it became kind of apparent to a lot of us that what we call liberal democracy actually may not be very interested in representing our interests. And also around that time, I'm sure people remember, but Bernie Sanders was getting called a communist, right? Bernie's a commie. Bernie's a socialist. He met Fidel, whatever. And at the time, I was not in 2016, I was just a Bernie guy. I wasn't a socialist or I wasn't a communist, but everybody called Bernie a communist. So I was like, well, I need to find out what communism actually is. And like a lot of people who are trying to figure out what communism actually is, I went out and bought a copy of the Communist Manifesto, which probably actually is not the best book to buy because I would go on to spend about 2 years totally misunderstanding what was in that book and what Marx was talking about. But regardless, damage was done. I was a socialist. In 2016, I was calling myself a socialist. And I graduated with a degree in accounting, which was really great because it basically allowed me to do two things. Number one, now that I've gone back to get my master's and I'm a Marxist and I understand Marxism, I can apply Marxism and class analysis to the academic study of accounting, which in the English language is not done very often. It kind of helps me stand out. I'm sure there's a Chinese Marxist theory of accounting, a Vietnamese Marxist theory of accounting, but it doesn't really exist in English. And that's a point I want to make just real quick, which is that if you are in school and you're doing academics like me, I would really recommend that you put all your effort into figuring out how Marxism applies to your academic discipline. Because in my experience, my professors are kind of amazed and they really kind of like that I come at it with a different perspective and that I'm really critically thinking about this stuff. And probably, to be honest, most of them have never heard of Marxism. The first time they've really heard of Marxism and thought of it as applied to accounting or really anything was whenever I submit my papers to them. But the other thing that becoming an accountant allowed me to do is the thing that accounting kind of allows you to do best, which is to have a stable life, right? I can pay my rent. And it also allowed me to have enough money left over to start investing in these leftist kind of projects that I really believed in, these anti-imperialist Marxist projects. And that was my plan for a long time. I was like, well, I'm just going to be an accountant, middle of the road kind of guy. I'm not an activist. I'm just going to give money to some of these projects whenever I can. And that was kind of my plan. And around 2018, I was working as an accountant in Dallas. And for the first time, I started to really understand Marxism. I'd been kind of calling myself a Marxist for 2 years, but it was really just more meme communism. It wasn't real Marxism and socialism, not ideology. And I really began to understand it in 2018 when I watched a video in my YouTube recommended called "They Are Keeping the World Poor, Understanding Global Conflicts," which is a video Caleb Maupin put out. And basically in this video, Caleb lays out in very simple terms the Leninist understanding of imperialism. And this was probably a year, maybe year and a half before I ever tried to read Lenin's Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. And it was at that moment that I began to actually understand Leninism and Marxism and imperialism. And it didn't require me to, bang my head against the wall trying to understand a 200-year-old Marxist text. It didn't require me to go out and be an activist. It was just I could understand the theory. What Caleb provided me was an opportunity to really understand what this stuff meant. And so I went through like Caleb's entire video library. I was like, I can't believe how easy and how interesting this stuff can be. And in the end, I ended up buying his book, his latest book at the time, which was Getting Rich Without Capitalism, America's Way Out. And that book blew my mind because it just took these Marxist concepts of economics, really complex stuff. I mean, Marx wrote 2 volumes of Capital and then worked on 3 volumes. And Caleb took it and he made it easy for me to understand, right? And I didn't know it at the time, but that was the beginning of my current project. The fact that I now understood this stuff and I knew that if other people read this, they could understand it too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing right now. What I'm doing, and I'm going to start with saying that if you're on left Twitter, if you're on left book, you're probably familiar with this phenomenon. There are a lot of ideas constantly floated around in left social media. Some of them are pretty cool. Some of them are really good and some of them are pretty bad. But there's not a ton of Marxist ideology. There's not a ton of discussion of Marxist ideology in these circles. And if you listen to Caleb's streams, you'll probably know that this can be chalked up to a lot of things. It could be McCarthyism, COINTELPRO, the manipulation of left-wing politics by the American and European bourgeoisie. But either way, I think a lot of us have become convinced that what's really lacking in a lot of ways among popular discourse is Marxist ideology. It's just not out there. At least it's not out there to the extent that it should be. And that was kind of a turning point for me. And I realized that I couldn't just sit back and sit on the sidelines and let other people do the work while I worked as an accountant and gave what money I could. I had to actually get started and actually try to do something. And it was around that time that Caleb was talking about building the Center for Political Innovation, a think tank. And I became really, really excited when he started to talk about that. I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of. And I knew it was something that I wanted the opportunity to help build and to make great. And so probably about a month and a half ago, I messaged Caleb. And let me say, I think the first time I messaged Caleb was 2018 in Dallas. He was great. I don't even remember what we talked about, but he was great. And he talked about Marxism with me. But I messaged Caleb about a month and a half ago. And I got an estimate on 40 copies of Getting Rich Without Capitalism, America's Way Out at print cost. And I knew that I wanted to distribute these books. And so I started doing my research. I reached out to my university. I did research on like COVID restrictions. I did research on free speech issues on campus. And I ended up coming up with the idea to just set up a table on campus with a big sign that says, "Ask me about socialism," with a box of books, and to let people come and talk to me about socialism. I'll talk to them. I'll hand out books to people who are interested. And it's taken a lot of work. I had some setbacks because we had like 3 hurricanes and like a month here in Louisiana. We've been getting it rough, but finally I'm pretty much on track to, for the first time, set up my table on Friday this next Friday, where I will be handing out books Caleb's work, Caleb's ideas, and these Marxist, these simple and easy explanations of complex Marxist theory. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that if you're like me and you don't really consider yourself an activist, maybe you're not even particularly outgoing, and you're not part of a formal party either because there's no infrastructure where you're at, or just because there's no party that you feel really represents what you think. I think this is something that should work for you, because this is something you can do yourself, right? If you're in Caleb's community, or you're watching this and you're thinking, what can I actually do to help get this ideology out there? Well, these kind of things are things you can do yourself. You set up a table, and you just talk to people. You get out there in your community and you talk to people. Like Dust says, like Caleb always says, out of the movement into the masses. Get out there and talk to people. And I want to emphasize that I did a lot of research. It took some time. It wasn't. It didn't come together like that. But I'm really excited to start working on it. And so, if you're like me and you're an optimist and you're a socialist, and you really do believe that we can build socialism in this country, like I really do believe, and you really agree that we need to get this ideology out there, we need to get people talking about Marxism. We need to get people to understand Marxism. This is something you can do. It can be a school. It could be downtown. It could be a public park. Wherever it's legal for you to set up and hand out books, it's something you could do. And I want to end by saying, if you are familiar with Caleb's channel, you may know this story. And it's the story. It's about William Z. Foster. And this is kind of partially what inspired me. William Z. Foster, who's one of the greatest American socialists, one of the greatest American Marxist thinkers in U.S. history. He started calling himself a socialist at the age of 19 because he was walking on his way to work, and there was some socialist sitting on the street corner talking about socialism with people. And we don't know the name of the guy who was talking about socialism on that street corner on that soapbox. We have no idea who it was. But that was a pivotal moment in the history of this country. This one weird little thing. This guy got up that morning, decided he was going to go talk about socialism on the street corner. And because of that, we got William Z. Foster. We got the strength of the Communist Party in the early 20th century, really a butterfly effect. And that's kind of what's at stake. That's kind of what I figured what's at stake here is, who could we be reaching today who could be the revolutionary leader of tomorrow, right? Without getting the ideology out there, we're doing ourselves a massive disservice. And that's kind of what I've come here to talk about. And I'll end by saying I hope that there's someone out there who's listening with an even better idea than mine, who's going to totally blow my idea out of the water, and that you'll share it with me, and then we'll do your idea, and that would be awesome. Let's build socialist ideology, and let's build socialist community. And then I don't really have a shout out. I don't have any work that I'm looking at publishing right now, or, I don't have a YouTube channel right now. I will say that I know there are people who watch Caleb streams who are located in Lafayette, who are in New Orleans, who are in Baton Rouge, Houston, Shreveport. I have a good friend in Shreveport who watches these. Reach out to me if you're interested in getting together and talking and working on this stuff. I would really like to get to know you, and we can work together, and that would be great. And so as a final note, I adapted a version of Peter Seeger's 1930 song, If I Had a Hammer, the Hammer song. He originally sang it for the Communist Party in the 1930s, back when the Communist Party was experiencing some serious legal issues. And he sang it in solidarity with them. So I've kind of come together and adapted my own version of the song. I hope you all like it. I know I'm dressed in a suit. I am not trying to be early 1960s Beatles. I did not have time to change between my my presentation and my song. But here we go. We got a hammer. Hammer in the morning, hammer in the evening, all over this world. Yeah. danger. Hammer out a warning. Hammer out justice for a fellow man. Yeah. Fire out a bell. Ring it in the morning. Ring it in the evening all over this land. Yeah. Ring out a bell. Ring out in danger. Ring out a warning. Well, we got a hammer and we got a bell. And we got a message to the world to tell. If we got a song, sing it in the morning. Sing it in the evening all over this land. Yeah. Sing out in danger. Sing out a warning. Sing out love for a fellow man. Yeah. Well, we got a hammer and we got a bell. And we got a message that we need to tell. So brothers and sisters, the future is in our hands. The hammer and bell will sing for a better land, for a better land. Sing for a better land. Yeah. Sing for a better land. Awesome. Thanks, y'all.